1979. 1979, President Gerald Ford stumbled to the podium and with a crayon signed into law the FDA Device Act, making devices. Before that, it was food, drug, and cosmetics. Now it becomes food, drug, cosmetics, and medical devices. This is now contagious, and the rest of the world has accepted this basic idea. They made the Device Act. It says inside the original Device Act that in doing anything with law, there is ambiguity. Sometimes this isn't interpreted the right way, as this is something, etc. So there's ambiguity. But they tried to make something that would be able to control devices. The FDA in America does not control medicine. This is the big myth. It does not control medicine. There is no federal organization that controls medicine. Medicine and all of its aspects of massage, chiropractic, acupuncture, etc., that is all controlled at the state level, not at the federal level. There is no federal law in Europe as well. That's all done by the separate countries. But the FDA does control the manufacturing and the claims made by the manufacturer. Manufacturing to make sure that it's quality and it is safe and effective. That's the essence of the law. Claims basically now extends to everything, everybody. Case in point, the man, Deepak Chari, a medical doctor? Okay, sister's medical doctor, yes, she's one of the doctors. And in their website, they published, the QXCI cured my mother. In their website, they published that. The FDA called our office. I got on the phone. They said, that's a claim. I said, well, we didn't make that claim. I never met her mother. It's supposed to be a joke. Every time I make a joke, I'm immediately cool. So, but they said, no, you're responsible for all claims. And I said, well, what if he won't change the website? They said, well, you have to make him. I said, well, what if he won't change? What if he's a renegade, doesn't like me? He said, you have to make every effort. Now, claims, that claim was made for a device. Medicine knows this. So angioplasty, is, and there's the balloon angioplasty, and there's laser angioplasty. That's plasty means changing inside the arteries, etc. So the balloon angioplasty, which is the most popular, if you said angioplasty cured my mother, that's fine. That's a technique. If you said Bob's balloon device did it, then that's a claim for the manufacturer. You understand? So what we need to do is we need to work with our patients and work with all the people so that everybody understands claims are allowed to be made for a technology, for a philosophy. Claims cannot be made for a device. The claim that can be made for our device is that it is safe, it is biofeedback, and it is effective. The definition of biofeedback is measuring a physiological response and seeing if it changes. simple biofeedback device might be your scale, your bathroom scale. You measure yourself, see how much you weigh. And then tomorrow you measure it again. Did you get feedback? Because the human body does not have a mechanism that tells us how much we weigh. That's what my wife's for. That's what she tells me. That's not a joke. I got to laugh at that. So that's a feedback. And that's what our machine does. And our machine is used in stress. Stress detection, stress therapy, thereby making it usable for everybody. And those are the claims that are allowed to be made for the device. Now, in doing this, our device does a lot of extra things. When we send signals in, we send multiple signals into the body to see how the patient reacts. We send signals about magnesium and about chromium and all different types of things. We see how they react. We're allowed to do that. That was written in our original thing. What that means, if you're then, because you get the device, and then can you jump into diagnosis? This we can do. The machine can't diagnose. The machine can assist a licensed practitioner in diagnosing. A machine that can diagnose, an example of that type of machine, is a machine such as the iron lung. The iron lung must diagnose how much oxygen's in your blood so that it can change its function. If the iron lung just kept working and all of a sudden you got too much oxygen and the thing just kept going and going and going, it would kill you. Too much oxygen, you die. So the iron lung is a class 3 device. Ours is a class 2 device. The machine cannot diagnose on its own. Understand? But the machine can be used by a licensed diagnostician. So the machine can assist in the diagnosis. When we test out hepatitis, we could find, well, the biggest one that we did, the largest study, was AIDS. Here in this country, I was given permission to work with all of the Hungarian AIDS patients. Which I checked them all out, had them on the machine, multiple visits. They all had code names, numbers. They were given numbers. I was not allowed to know their names. And we tested all of the HIV positive and all of the AIDS patients in this country. When we worked through this, we worked out a profile that was 85% correct in finding out whether somebody had AIDS. And when in the challenge that we did, the medical doctors sent me 4 people in the study that they knew did not have AIDS to see if I would be able to tell. And I didn't know who those 4 people were. I picked out those 4 people. We did another study here with cataracts. We found out there was a very accurate ability to find out who had cataracts. And it was very interesting that our machine found that they sent me I think they sent me 4 people there again who did not have cataracts, and our machine said that 2 of them did. A new device was bought, a very powerful microscope, and here those 2 people really did have cataracts. The machine caught it, the doctors didn't. So our machine, and making our machine for stress detection, etc., we can diagnose stress from the machine, that's not a problem. But to diagnose other diseases, we can't. Okay? But the machine and a biofeedback therapist are allowed to diagnose stress. Claims made, so almost any type of claim, but claims made by the manufacturer and the salespeople are even the most controlled. So the salespeople really should not be making claims of the device other than biofeedback. Understand this? Now, salespeople manufacturing people, etc., should not be making claims other than our registered claims. Education must be separate from sales. This comes to us from America, where in America for the last 50, 60 years, the drug companies have had detail men working in the hospitals. These detail men are usually bachelors of science or bachelors of business, not even probably master's people, but their entire education is all business and sales. And then they are hired to go into the hospitals and dispense information about the new drugs that are on the market. Every year, 50 to 75 drugs are taken off the market because they're hurting people or killing people. So after about 10 years, a medical doctor who's graduated, after 10 years, there's a whole new set of drugs that are out there. In America, they say that you have to have continuing education. You have to learn about these things. But most of that continuing education is done in the Bahamas, and in between Mai Tais. In England, where they don't have the continuing education, this is one of the reasons why the doctors are so bad. I personally know that there are doctors in England who all of the prescriptions they write are for drugs that do not exist. And the pharmacist, the local pharmacist, just winks, and substitutes. Because they don't have continuing education. Now, these detail men were working, and the horror story that came down was a detail man who sold a hip joint replacement. And it was a senator, and I think the senator's name was Brown, I'm not positive. But there was a senator who was in the operating table to get a hip replaced, and they have on the video that when the doctor could not get the hip into the joint, the salesman got up and said, "Here, I'll show you how it goes." And he forced it in, and the man died. The people, the medical associations, etc., said, "Wait a minute, how much of the education is coming from salespeople?" And they said, "Uh-oh, there's a problem." Sales, because that would be a conflict of interest. If you're a salesperson and you're selling mouthwash, you might tell the doctor that they have to take a bath in this. Conflict of interest. Legislations came out so that a medical doctor cannot refer his client to a pharmacy, even if he owns 5% of that pharmacy. He must not refer to that person. In 1996, after I had finished my AIDS studies here in this country, part of the agreement is I took my Hungarian doctors and we went to Singapore to the World Congress of Sexually Transmitted Disease and AIDS. We went to Singapore to deliver our presentation. Very interesting. A lot of money, a lot of fun. And I was one of the Hungarian, because it was a Hungarian team. We did the research. I was one of the Hungarian doctors. Anyway, on day one, there was over 5,000 participants from all over the world. On day two, I had to deliver my paper on day two, but there was only 1,500 in the room. And I noticed that in the room were all the Americans, all the English, the Canadians, and the Australians. The largest group was Malaysia, because it was close. Africa, they were all gone. Very large group on Africa about AIDS. And all of the third world countries, including Hungary, was 1996, and Hungary was not part of the EC. Even the Hungarian doctors weren't there. And I said, where is everybody? Well, the next morning, because I was listed as one of the Hungarians, I was invited to where they were. Welcome, the drug company, had set up in a hotel across the street a very, very large hall where these people were coming and paid to come. And they were teaching them neuro-linguistic programming techniques on how to sell antibiotics. They were teaching them how to sell antibiotics to anybody so you could get and make more money. The average Hungarian doctor at that time was making $300 a month. It was hard for me to convince them that another $300 a month from selling antibiotics wouldn't be helpful. That conflict of interest was existing in America, Canada, Australia. That's why they weren't invited to that thing. Now this conflict of interest is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. The salespeople are allowed to, people from this world, the educational world, can express their opinion. That's freedom of speech. To do it correctly in terms of America and Europe, they should have a contract with the salespeople saying that they are a provider of information. Here's the rub. The FDA said a provider of information should make no more than $500 a day. Plus his expenses. That makes it hard for salespeople to get good education people. That's what that contract, if the contract goes beyond that, that contract will be out of line. Now you people are the dispensers of the information. All you people are providers of information, right? Yes. You're the trainers, right? If you are training how to turn on and off the device, that is part of the sales, that is part of the manufacturing, how to turn off and on the device. In our office, I was in a chiropractic office working, and we bought an X-ray device. The man brought it in, and he showed us how to turn on and off the X-ray device so that we wouldn't kill people. That was very nice. I appreciated that. So we wouldn't cook fish, be able to operate it effectively. And then after taking a film, the chiropractor said, "What does this mean? What does this mean? How do you interpret this?" And the man said, "You have to take a course in radiology." And he said, "Well, don't you have an opinion?" He said, "No, I'm not allowed to express my opinion because you might construe that." Because he was there just as sales, just to turn on and off the device. When we go from that point of how to turn on and off the device, we go beyond that, and we're talking about how to help people with cancer, how to help people with whatever, how to interpret this. That starts to become more of a medicine educational process. Okay? And there should be a provider of information type contract that if you are involved, so you have the freedom, so you know where that line is. I ended up doing this as my doctoral thesis for law, international law. And this was my thesis. It was 350 pages, and I had found that the FDA had violated 5 different American laws by not credentialing the acupuncture team. One of them was ex post facto. You need to remember ex post facto because if the state that you live in does not license biofeedback technicians, and none of them do, if you are a licensed biofeedback technician, such as with Immune, you can get a license license, ex post facto will dictate that you will be grandfathered in. You get 2 years experience to do work. They pass a law that says that now you have to get a license to do biofeedback. They will have to give you one by dictum of law, English law, ex post facto. They'll make you come in and fill out forms, etc., but they won't be able to say no if you have a license. I became licensed in the state of Ohio as a psychologist because I was practicing psychology when they passed the law. Take the other one away so I don't get confused. Where's she got? Okay, you understand? Now, so it came along in 1990, and I made my package. I sent it to the FDA, explaining the laws that were broke, etc., etc. And 5 days later, they sent an investigator to come investigate me. The man they sent was Dennis Hudson. Dennis Hudson was the hitman for alternative medicine. In his area, which was Idaho and Washington, he had personally confiscated 5 truckloads of devices and products not properly registered, where no other FDA agent in all of America, none of them were confiscating things. But Dennis Hudson was the guy. He is the guy who in Washington, Seattle, Washington, brought in a SWAT team with machine guns and bulletproof gear to go into Dr. Jeffrey Bland's, Jeffrey White's office. They went into Dr. White's office because he had an illegal bottle of vitamin C. And he had a SWAT team with shotguns, tear gas. That's true. I can't make this stuff up. He came in. Now, he was taken out of his jurisdiction to come after me. What I found was my treatise, which was the treatise of description that we were before 1976. This was called a 510K application. That was the name of it. I made a 510K application. Okay? 5 days later, he came in. And what I found was, if he started an investigation against me, my 510K was frozen. It would go to the back of the line. It would never be seen. As long as there was an investigation or if there was a felony against me. He was in my office for 3 months, going through every piece of paper. I'd bring in more paper. He went through every piece of paper. Have fun. Finally, he had found something. I had given a form to my secretary. There was a government form from the FDA. And I gave this form to her, and I said, I want you to make the questions look like this, but use this letterhead. She didn't hear the second half of the sentence. This is my secretary, Wendy, who on one occasion, I used to be one of the members of the Inner Circle, a supporter of the Republican Party. I didn't care about the Republican Party. But when I would go to these meetings, the hardest working person in the room was me, working for alternative medicine, working for homeopathy. I had dinner with George Bush Sr. I had breakfast with Richard Nixon. I had a dinner with Quayle. Quayle was the vice president. So I was in these circles, you see. And I think George Bush Sr. was an excellent guy. I think George Bush Jr. is going to go down in history not as really the stupidest president we've ever had.
You said something about
Not as the stupidest leader, as the stupidest freaking person. Excuse me. investigation, and this thing with Wendy, because Wendy, you know, I was going to the inner circle of Washington. I was going to have dinner with George Bush again, and they canceled it. And she came to me and she says, "They canceled your dinner. You can't go." I said, "Oh, okay. Why?" She said, "Well, there's the golf crisis." And she said, "Bill, what's wrong with the golf courses?" I said, "It's not the golf courses. It's the Gulf of Iran." Huh? We had 5 people working in the office. There was Bill Nelson, there was Bill Shannon, there was Tony, there was Dave, and there was Bob. And I had this piece of paper with Dave, and I said, "Here, give this to Bill, Wendy." She said, "Which Bill should I give it to?" "I think the other Bill." Pardon me? No, give it back to me. So she was a ditch, but now he didn't care. He found something to make a charge against me because she had printed a piece of paper with this letterhead saying. So he found something to make a charge against me, and that then allowed them to continue freezing this, hoping to get a felony. In 1995, I was arrested at the JFK airport, coming home for Christmas to visit my kids. Luckily, this guy came into the office when he did, 1990, and all of my staff quit in America because they didn't want to work with an FDA agent sitting there looking through their lunch, and that's what he did. He looked through their lunch every day, see what they were bringing in or out papers. So nobody wanted to work in that environment. They quit. My next trip, I came over here to Kiev. I found out I could hire Kiev doctors to study cancer. Over here, I found out I could work here at doing AIDS. And in America, they said that the problems with the machine. Over here, they said, "Oh, no problem. We can make the machine." So I started working here. Thank God for them. That's how God works in mysterious ways. 1996. On leap day in February, I was taken to court. Judge Maich, the Oklahoma City bombing judge, was my judge. Judge Maich. He had just been picked to do the Oklahoma City bombing. So he must have had a change of heart, I guess. I don't know. At any rate, they want so much money. My lawyer came to me, and I gave him $10,000. I borrowed it from friends. It was all I had. I needed $10,000 to hire him as a retainer. Once he takes the case, he's supposed to take the case. He's not supposed to threaten me. But he came in and he says, "If you could give me another 50, he says, "I think you got a 90% chance of winning. If you don't have another 50, then you probably got like a 50-50 chance." The FDA made a deal. They said I would do no time, I would get probation. And I could be back in Budapest teaching at the university. And I was teaching at the university in London, England, and Budapest. That was my life, was over here. So they said that they would drop that. I'd be on probation, and they would allow me to do my probation here. So I made a deal. Okay. We came into court on that day, that leap day. Came into court, and there was a young woman in front of me. And Judge Maich said to her, "Did you make a deal? Was there a plea bargain?" And she nervously looked and said, "No." I turned to my lawyer and I said, "How do I answer that question?" And she says, "You must lie to the judge. You must tell him that there's not a plea bargain." What? She says, "Well, you have to lie to the judge twice. Say, I pled guilty to get, the part of this deal. You have to tell him you did it when it didn't. You have to lie about that. And if he doesn't believe you, he'll punish you. And you have to tell him that there wasn't a deal when there was a deal." And I said, "Well, I thought the whole idea of this was that he's the guy you don't lie to. Isn't that right? I thought that was what the system was about, that he's the guy you don't lie to. Isn't that kind of the way we think it?" And they said, "No, that's not the rule." They said, and I found out in America we don't have a justice system. We have a let's make a deal. It's a game show. behind door 2. They'll do something to you behind door 2. I said, what am I going to do? I turned to my lawyer and said, I don't want to lie to the judge. So I didn't have to, because the Judge Mage came out. It was my case next. He came out. And he says, I look at this case. I went through this all last night. He said, I see you got a guilty plea, but I don't see that this man did anything wrong. Nobody in my courtroom is going to plead guilty to something he didn't do. Whoa. Thank you, God. I think it was the Oklahoma City thing, it made him think about this, and the world was attending to him. So he said, Dr. Nelson, you want to change your plea? Yes, I do. Not guilty, not guilty. Did I say it loud enough? Not guilty. So it was never official. See? I've not a film. The other side came out, made their case, and and he chastised them for this and that. And he chastised my lawyer. He said, what are you doing letting this guy plead guilty? Yeah, excellent case. He said, anybody could have won this case. So I was let go. They had my passport. And I said, Your Honor, at the end, I said, I'd like my passport back. The guy, they dropped the case, and the other attorney, he came over to me, and the judge was behind his back, and he said, we'll just get another judge. We'll just get another judge, and it'll be good. Okay. So I stood up, and I said, Your Honor, could I have my passport back? He said, Bill Nelson, you're as free as any man in this room. You will have your passport back within the next hour. The FDA stood up and went, whoa, no, this is the Antichrist. You can't, oh my God. They actually used that word, Antichrist. Seriously. They're referring to me as the devil of medicine. Really, it's kind of cool. How many people in a court of law get called the Antichrist? So he said, Judge Mage pulled down the hammer and he said, Gentlemen, that was not a request. That was an order. If he does not have his passport back within the next hour, he said, Bailiff, what time is it? It's 4:10. If he does not have his passport by 5:10, all of the prosecuting counsel will be spending the long weekend in jail under contempt. I couldn't catch up with them. They ran so fast. I'm serious. They were good because it was a long way to get, and they came back. And the bailiff was standing next to me. He's saying, here it is, 15 minutes to spare. On that day, they dropped the charges. They dropped the investigation. It took them 6 months to get another judge, which they did. But at that point, they dropped the charges. My 510K went to the front of the line. I have friends in America, in the FDA, and we brought it to the front of the line. 2 weeks after Leap Day, 1996, the United States government, FDA, made acupuncture needles legal medical equipment. They got a new judge. Before I left, I met with the FDA. I sat down with the prosecuting attorneys, and I had lunch, and I talked with them. And I said that, they said, this isn't over, we're going to get a new judge. I said, okay, when you do, let me know. And they said, so I made a deal with them. They were nice, And the guy said, well, when you come back, we'll do the same type of thing this way. You have a bail arrangement. We'll put you out on bail. That's how I was before. In New York, I was out on bail in 24 hours. And it was about 3 or 4 years ago. The Noetic Society, Edgar Mitchell from the Noetic Society, had remembered me from the Apollo 13, and he'd heard about me in alternative medicine, and he had called me for me to lecture in the Noetic Society. Maybe it was 5 years, but so he wanted me to come, and I said, well, it's about time for me to go to America and face this. And I said, I'm not sure I should go, I wasn't sure. And he said, well, why don't you come incognito? I said, oh, really? He says, I don't care if you wear a dress. I'm on the plane. I got this just the right number. You know, the little pumps in. So anyway. So the lawyer from the other side, who was there at the case, went kind of crazy. And he called up my lawyer and said, remember that deal we made about putting him out on bail? We changed our minds. We're not going to do that deal. He did not have to call. Our lawyer says he had no obligation to call. So I still have some friends in the FDA, and I called them up. They said, well, we'll get back. And after 2 weeks, they came back, and they said, here's the deal. There will be 50 agents waiting for you. 5 of them. You will be first taken to 2 weeks detention in Los Angeles, 2 weeks detention in El Paso, Texas, 2 weeks detention in Okefenokee Swamp, Florida, 2 weeks detention in Tennessee in a prison, 2 weeks detention in New Hampshire. This is what I was told. After that, they don't know what they're going to do with you. You could be put on the slow boat. The slow boat. How they get you to Washington, D.C., which is where the indictment is. Because in Denver, nobody will take this now. Judge H made a ruling, nobody will take this. But in Washington, where they went to get a new judge, you see, none of this case happens in Washington, but they set it up in Washington because those judges, the government can just buy. Or, I don't know how, but they make it easy for you. See, so how they get me there doesn't matter. And it could take years or a lifetime. I said, what? In the land of the free? Oh, yeah. Yeah, right. So I said, no, I can't wear the dress. I'm trying to make a deal with them now, and basically trying to get back to America. My father and my mother are both sick and can't visit me or have to see them before they die. But efforts that we make seem to be stymied. Thought I'd tell you that little story. So if you hear from other people, that's the scoop of it. Okay, you're practitioners now. How do you protect the practitioner? As we described, the control of devices is under the FDA, and control of device claims is under the FDA. But practitioners and the control of medicine is under the states. Each state is slightly different in what people can or can't do, etc., etc. However, none of the states regulate biofeedback. Which is seen as a medical art that is not registered. Acupuncture is only registered, what, in 30 states now? Acupuncture is still not registered in all 50. When I left, it was only 24. I think they've registered now some more. Naturopathy is only registered in 9 states, as I understand. You see? So there are different arts. Respiratory therapy is registered in many states, but not all. Massage therapy is registered in certain states and not all. Mechanotherapy is registered only in Ohio. There's doctors in mechanotherapy, etc. Okay? So that's all. But biofeedback is unregulated. As are many other arts. There are other arts. Aromatherapy, unregulated. There's no real regulations. There's no state criteria who is or who is not. A court criteria, if you were to go to court, if in the case of like me with the homeopathy drop, gave the drop to the homeopathy. The woman had a car accident and gave her homeopathic the same day. Okay, fine. You never know why you're in court. What does the judge think if he hears an unregulated area? He knows that they exist. If you tell him if he says, why are you a biofeedback therapist? And you say, well, I read a paperback and thought I could do it too. He's not going to buy that. What does he want? He wants to see what type of education you have, what type of training you have, what type of practical experience you have, and what type of networks do you have. Education. And that's all the type of education that you have. But how much education do you have in biofeedback? Education is one thing. Another one is license. You can get a license from the international. You can get an international license from the International Medical University. Nothing wrong with that. Don't claim it's a state license. You can get a driver's license. I got a driver's license in Puerto Rico. An international driver's license in the Caribbean. Went to America, rent a car, asked us, you have a license? Here it is. It's not an American thing, it's a Caribbean thing. You got a license? Yes. Okay, here's a rental car. Get stopped for a ticket? Do you have a license? Here you go. You show them your Nigerian license. You have a license. License is better than having no license. Why not? It's an international license. When I was taken to court by the state of Colorado for practicing medicine without a license, the question the judge asked me, first question is, do you have a license? I said, yes. I have a license. The case was, I had gone to the Century Clinic in this crazy world life, you know. Oh my God. Anyway, I went to Reno, Nevada, where there was the Century Clinic, and the Century Clinic was run by a group of doctors. I won't mention their names. At any rate, it was a Chinese doctor, and they were selling the Intero system, which is a point probe system. This is way back, even before I had ever developed the EPFX. EPFX didn't exist. They had a point probe system they were using called the Intero. Anybody know about the Intero? So they had a point probe system, the Intero. I was working with some of the Intero people, and I was doing instruction. I was teaching about the point probe, and I was developing the ideas to make the EPFX, to make a better system. So they brought me in. They wanted me to teach people how to run, how to do clinics and how to run this. And I said, I'm one of the best teachers, and I can do that. And they said, fine. However, they do not want me, they only wanted me to teach 1/10 what they need to know. You teach all the people only 1/10 what they need to know. So when they have trouble with their patients, they'll send the patients to the Century Clinic. And I said, well, your Century Clinic is just chelation. That's all you're doing is chelating. Chelating's not for everybody. It is in our book. You know. You got a hangnail, you get chelation. You have an argument with your wife, you get chelation. I said, no, I don't want to do that. Anyway, they sent a man to my clinic. They sent a man to my clinic. He had a tape recorder in the pocket of his suit coat. This is where I learned. Had I had a sign that said, no taping without permission, I could have stopped that tape recording, that covert tape recording, right? I also had two waivers. One was the waiver, which I'm sure you've seen, it's in the system. One is the waiver, which he signed, and when my back was turned, he pocketed. But on my other form, the intake form, where I asked him questions of his health care, what doctor, etc., I had another waiver at the bottom, which he then signed also. And that one was in a notepad that he couldn't take. Okay. So I learned the power of the waiver. Simple waiver that says, I'm not diagnosing or treating. And a very nice legal waiver, a legal form is in the machine. So what you want to do, you want to have a waiver. You want to have as much training as possible, and usually a judge would consider training beyond 2 years as excellent in an area such as this. He would consider a practical experience of 2 years as excellent. If you can do this, it's a lock on you being grandfathered in states. Not having 2 years, something about 2 years that they think is reasonable. This networks belonging to organizations, magazines, journals, belong to the Naked Biofeedback Therapist Weekly. Well, I think that's a monthly volume now, isn't it? So, waiver. Next one, a referral. To refer. Now, the guy's name who came to me was a Mr. Martin. Mr. Martin, did this thing, came to me. And I bought a car off of Martin, a guy, and it was 12 payments, $500 each. It was a car dealership, I bought a 280Z, and a used one was my favorite car. And he forgot about the last payment. He didn't ask me for it. I said, everything okay? So he gave me the pay slip. He didn't ask me for the last payment. If he'd asked it, I had to give it to him, But he didn't ask, so I thought it was okay. So I got called to court for Martin. I thought it was about the car. I came in blue jeans and a t-shirt with the $500, here we go, And here it was about practicing medicine without a license. I come walking in this complete jury. There's a jury. Yes. So we sit down, and I said, I don't need a lawyer. First thing, I said, I needed time to go back, get my items. They said, come back tomorrow. I came back the next day. So I went back, and I found the waiver in my office. Came back in. The judge asked me, do you have a license? I said, yes. And I said, I have a waiver. He said, oh, no, you don't have a waiver. And what is this? And then he said, I said, I do have a waiver. The judge looked at it, and this is your signature. So the judge turned to the prosecuting attorney and said, he has a license, and he's got a waiver. So, okay, let's listen to the evidence. So he had his tape recorder. He set his tape recorder down, and he played the tape, and etc. And in the middle of a sentence, he gets up, and he takes the tape, and he turns it over. And the second part of the sentence is on the other side. And I said, Your Honor, excuse me, but when he was in my office, he did reach into his coat pocket and put that tape over. And the judge went, is this an edited tape? Is this a copy? Yeah, you can't bring in a copy. He said, prosecuting attorney, come on. Made all kinds of funny faces. He said, the man's got a waiver, the man's got a license, you got an edited tape, get this case over. The referral, what I mean is, by working in the system of medicine, asking what medical doctors do your patients have. I go to see Joe Barnes, he's the best doctor, okay, fine. Write a simple letter to Joe, or give it to the patient, say, would you give this to the doctor? And if they don't do it, that's their problem. You say, let them buy the stamp. But have a simple letter saying, I'm going to treat your patient, I do biofeedback, I'm going to do nutritional counseling, I can help you and you can help me. Is there any contraindications? Does he have epilepsy? You know, whatever. You know, is there anything you want to tell me as a biofeedback therapist? Or maybe you want me to help in certain aspects. You see? That's a simple referral. You could give the letter to the patient, say, give this. Now, if the patient does not have a doctor, you should have a medical friend that you could refer him to. That medical friend might be in Switzerland, Hungary, it could be me. I'm a licensed medical doctor. So you could refer them to me. If they don't go, they don't go. You know. But by you making an effort to network into the medical system, by you doing this, you're going to protect yourself. The best protection is that waiver. Next thing is get yourself, document all your education, all your little bits of this, all your practical patients, etc. data. Understand you have to protect these under HIPAA. These all have to be very protected, so you don't just make sure that they're protected, these patient data. There's new laws about this. Okay? You do this, and you'll be protected. Nobody wants that case against you. The man came to see me I had a practice in, what was the name of the town? It's in Ohio. Ravenwood. It was in Ravenwood, Ohio, a tiny little town. And I was doing patients with things. In comes the inspector from the state of Ohio Medical Board, wanting to check if I was practicing medicine without a license. He came in, I sat down with him, went over all this stuff, and basically we went to lunch to talk. And he says, I'm not supposed to, he really liked me, he was a very nice guy. And he says, according to the rules, on this form I have the signature of the person who made the charge against you. And according to the rules, I'm not supposed to tell you who it is. And I looked and saw the chiropractor was next door. It's about 5 miles away. Who was angry about that, because most of the time medical doctors don't care what you're doing. It's usually people inside alternative medicine who want to get you. So we went back to my office. He had gone through everything, all the different waivers, everything that we do. And he said, will you be here at 6 o'clock? And I said, well, if you want me to, I will. He said, please. Okay. He came back, he brought his 2 daughters for therapy. His 2 daughters had medical problems, and he brought them in for therapy. That's weird. And all charges were dropped. The investigation showed that I was not practicing medicine without a license. I was doing biofeedback. And I said to him, I said, well, your children have this neurological disease, which I was able to cure, by the way. And he said, you're not diagnosing it, it's already been diagnosed. And you're about to do your work, your treatment. Because, you treat people and they have stress. So, that's okay. You sign the waiver, guy. Which he did. That was it. So, I'm just been through the mill with all these things. I helped lots of people. There was a practitioner in Cleveland, Ohio, very good friend of mine. I won't mention names, but she's a very, very good friend of mine. And she is not a medical doctor, she's a naturopath. But she wants to pretend that she's a medical doctor. And she got in trouble with the state of Ohio, practicing medicine without a license. Because she will not use the waiver. She tells her people that she is a medical doctor. I called her up and I said, listen, you can't do that. And we're good friends. I used to work at her clinic. We saw members of the Cleveland Browns together. So we're good friends. And I said, honey, you can't do this. She says, but I am better than the medical doctors. And I said, I totally agree. And I would send everybody I know to you before I send to any of these medical doctors. I totally agree. But you don't have the state of Ohio's permission. She said, well, I'm going to go to Kentucky. She'll cross over from Cincinnati. And she says, I'll go into the first town and I'll set up my clinic there. And I said, state of Ohio won't be able to get you. You're right. But after you do that twice and you cross the line, then it becomes a federal case. So you only can do that twice. You can't do that anymore. But it's going to take 2 or 3 years to find you. You know, good luck. But I said, a better recommendation, why don't you just become a biofeedback person? Use the waiver and say what you want to do, you know. And we'll get you a doctorate in biofeedback. You know, you can get a doctorate in biofeedback, doctorate in wellness. You know, we'll get you that, you can be a doctor, you know. We'll do that for you. Just play the game a little bit. She says, no, I don't want the waiver. I don't want my patients thinking, okay, then. So, if you're in Kensington, Kentucky, and you need a doctor, let me know.